And I'll have the mic off, so you're not gonna hear anything. You're good. Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. Mic check. Mic check 1 2 3 4. Mic check 1 2 3 4. You got me, Meister? Okay. Mic check 1 2 3 4. You got me? Okay, perfect. Hey Carson, I don't.
Well, thank you all for being here. Today is yet another incredibly important day for Tulsa, for the descendants of the race massacre, and for the residents of North Tulsa and Greenwood. And that's because today the experts are back here with me, getting ready to get started at Oaklawn Cemetery this week for our fifth and largest excavation up to this point. This is my first excavation as mayor, and so I do want to make sure I recognize and thank Mayor G.T. Bynum for his leadership in getting this work started. Joining me today are Dr. Carrie Stacklebeck, who's back, a state archaeologist with the state of Oklahoma, Dr. Phoebe Stubblefield, a forensic anthropologist from the University of Florida, and Brenda Nels, Alford, a Tulsa Race Massacre descendant, a strong supporter of this work, and a graduate of the University of Tulsa. Very important, by the way. I also want to thank Ryan Peterson with Stantec, Kyra Carby, there she is right there, and the whole team at Intermountain Forensics for their continued work on the genealogy side of this, which has been critically important. Before I let this team tell you more about the process, I think it's important to keep this into the appropriate perspective. Earlier this summer, I announced our Road to Repair plan, which included the creation of a private charitable trust that is charged with raising and spending $105 million going to doing the things that we believe matters, investing in housing at the recommendation of the Beyond the Apology Commission, investing in scholarships for the next generation of descendants of victims of the race massacre, investing in business grants and business loans and cultural landmarks and infrastructure to make sure that the Greenwood District's best days are ahead of us. And so we believe that to be very much connected and very much important. We also have released at this point all of the previously undisclosed records that we had here at the city. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 41,000 pages of documents have been released. And we created the first ever Tulsa Race Massacre Observance Day, which will be observed every June 1st moving forward. We also, within that announcement, reaffirmed our commitment to the Graves investigation, something that as long as it takes, we expect the Greenwood Trust to be able to invest in what happens next. On the genealogy side, we've come a long way since the first identification of C.L. Daniel. He was the first race massacre victim from our search. I am happy to, as an update, we've been working with C.L. Daniel's family to make sure that his remains go home wherever his family wants him buried. So we're still working through that, but I think it's a great example of bringing closure to a family and doing right by someone who served this country in the armed services. But also in June, we announced the second race massacre victim from our search, Mr. James Goings, along with another positive race massacre victim, Mr. George Melvin Gillespie. This groundbreaking work from our archaeological teams and genealogy teams is a great mark of success, and it's telling us that we're certainly in the right place and on the right track. The latest report from the Oklahoma Archaeological Survey gave us very detailed information as to what we believe we have left at Oaklawn Cemetery. So we got a good feel for, we know what's still out there and the work out in front of us. And the data and the work speaks for itself on why we're going back. Dr. Stacklebeck will touch on all that in just a minute. But before I pass it to her and for others for the information that they'll provide, I do want to reiterate to everyone who is out there who wants to be part of the process, please fill out an interest form. It is at www.cityoftulsa.org/1921 Graves, or you can get with Brenda so that we can get you signed up to volunteer. I'm told that there are, I believe, 10 volunteers already, and the more folks who want to be involved, I think the better it is not only for this process, but the better it is for our community. Also want to flag for anyone watching who may be interested, we will be having yet another genealogy workshop on November 7th and 8th to help descendants and Greenwood residents share their family's history and their potential connection to the race massacre. And so if you're interested in any of that, please visit www.cityofTulsa.org/genealogy workshop. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Mayor Nichols, and thank you to the citizens of Tulsa for welcoming our team back for another round of field work out at Oaklawn Cemetery. So, as Mayor Nichols pointed out, the detailed, full-blown report for summarizing the results of the 2024 phase of our investigation from last year has now been finalized. We had previously put out an executive summary that hit kind of the high points. This larger document is now available in 2 volumes. It's a pretty behemoth document, but it is available on the city's website, just as the mayor had indicated there. And also just to note is that even though that's coming out through the University of Oklahoma Archaeological Survey, it is absolutely a team effort, just like everything that we've been doing in terms of our field work. And so we have multiple authors on that document based on their areas of specialization. So we have Dr. Stubblefield has her chapter on the osteological results. Myself and Ryan and others are documenting the archaeological phases of the work and the results of our part of the investigation. But we also have paleoethnobotanist Dr. Jennifer Haney and the work that she did to identify the wood samples from the containers for the individuals that we explored or that we investigated last year, as well as, in one case anyway, a fragment of wood that was not from the container but was nonetheless found with burial number 195. We also have the historic artifacts are also analyzed in great detail in that document as well. And there's a lot of additional information beyond that, but it's just basically to say that this is a behemoth effort, a huge effort, and we have just an incredible team of highly qualified experts who bring those skills to the field and into the write-up process and analysis that happens afterwards. So encourage you to check out that report and those 2 volumes when you're able to. So one of the things that we had talked about from the previous round of the field work was we had encountered several additional trauma victims during last field season. But even with that, and Dr. Stubblefield is going to discuss that further when she comes up to the podium, but even with those additional individuals, we have not yet encountered the total number of trauma victims that we know are reportedly in this section of Oaklawn Cemetery. In terms of the number of burn victims and gunshot victims. And so for that reason, we do have cause to return and continue to expand our excavations and hopefully try to encounter the remains of those individuals in the portion of the cemetery in the southwest corner that we have not yet explored, which is exactly what we're going to be doing when we are doing right now. We have broken ground. We have teams out there right now as I speak who are monitoring while we do, as we have in the past, the mechanical removal of overburden and those upper few feet of soil that is lying over the tops of the levels of the grave shafts. And so they're monitoring that work very closely. And so our goal, again, kind of as we have done in previous field seasons, is to get that larger block exposed and get down to the level at which we are encountering the graves. And then next week, the rest of our team will be coming in in anticipation of conducting hand excavations, that finer scaled hand excavation starting on Monday. So that's a kind of a basic overview of kind of where we left things last year and where we're picking up now for this next field season. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Stubblefield.
Being short again. Thank you. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Stackelbeck. Thank you, Mayor Nichols. Thank you to all of you and that you're here. Many of you that have been here over the years have heard me express my thanks to you and the community. But if you're new to this gathering, I really want to reinforce my thanks for your presence. You help us reconstruct this history, this suppressed history, and it's a history that I tangentially share. My parents grew up here in Tulsa, and little did I know I'd be coming back here to help recover these individuals that were discarded after this event. The report that is newly out from our 2024 work, the chapter I wrote, or we wrote, it features the work of many other forensic anthropologists and osteologists who are contributing, and community members as well, like Brenda Nails Alford, who has been in our lab this entire time, helping get these individual stories reconstructed from their skeletons. So if you have the patience and time, please look at our report. And it's not just a report of bones, even though bones do tell quite a story about our identities, but some of the individuals had artifacts that are of interest, and so I encourage you to look there. So I just wanted to reiterate our findings on trauma that have sent us back here today. So as you may recall, the documentation we had from those who were killed, the African American individuals who were killed during the race massacre, they were about 20 of them, state, local, were buried locally with certificated death. So they had death certificates, and those death certificates indicated the majority had gunshot wounds. Then there were 4 that were burned. So the newspaper accounts of the time indicated that the individuals were buried in plain caskets. So these are caskets without handles. So in our investigations over the years and continuing this season, we are looking for male individuals buried in plain caskets, hopefully demonstrating trauma and gunshot wound trauma. But you'll note, if you recall, Private Daniel did not display any gunshot wound trauma, but we have him confirmed as a riot death. And keep in mind, we're only telling the story that the skeleton tells, and if the skeleton is not hit by or affected by the trauma, I can't tell you about it unless we find other artifactual evidence, like bullets in place, which we have found. But in our last season's work, we found both the combination of bullets in place and gunshot wound trauma that affected the skeleton. So in our last season's recovery, our people of particular interest are Burial 157. I usually run him out of order because he had an interesting bullet. It was, generically, we would say it was hardened lead, hardened with metals like tin or antimony. Generically, we call that pewter. And so pewter bullets often represent a sign that someone was pouring their own load, but it's not a guarantee. The pewter bullets aren't as hard as commercially manufactured lead bullets of the time. So Barrel 157 was recovered with evidence of at least 2 gunshot wounds from this softer load. And then the other 3 interesting individuals, barrels 135, 194, and 195, all demonstrated multiple forms of ballistic damage. 135 and 195 had gunshot wound damage and handgun damage. So we're looking for perhaps more individuals like that. The pattern of damage to 135 and 195, their legs were the target of the shotgun blasts. So we can't know for sure if that pattern of someone being hunted, because why do you shoot for the legs? To stop them running. We don't know if we'll see more of that, but that we're seeing evidence of trauma that resembles the historical narrative is what we recovered in our last season. So there may be more trauma victims of this ballistic nature. We're definitely looking for additional burn victims. And so the burning does survive over the years. We did see that with Barrel 195. Evidence of burning is preserved on the skeletal material if the skeleton was affected by the burning. So that shapes our model for why we're back here now, because we're not convinced we've done a thorough enough search to account for the records we have of the dead buried there in Oaklawn Cemetery. So that's what we'll be proceeding with. My colleagues from various institutions will be returning from the Office of the Medical Examiner here in Oklahoma, OU, San Diego State, my close colleague at Florida Gulf Coast University. They'll be joining us to help with the osteological examination, and hopefully we'll get these people a little more recovered. So I did mention that Brenda Nels Alford has been a constant volunteer in our lab, in the field and in our lab with the nice air conditioning. But she'll speak more to you about how the community is involved in our investigation.
Good afternoon. I think the race is long. Thank you so much, fellow alum. As I have shared in the past, growing up in the Greenwood community was one of the happiest times of my life. However, finding out about the Tulsa Race Massacre many years later when I was grown was so very devastating. And I wanted to do whatever I could to honor the memory and legacies of my family and our community members who gave us their best in spite of everything that they had endured. I will always honor that, because to know that, they lost their homes, they lost family members, they lost friends, neighbors that they never saw again, on top of the atrocities that they endured. As I said, I will always honor that they gave us their best. Therefore, when this opportunity came about to be a part of the 1921 Graves investigation, I could not resist. I remained so very humbled and honored to participate with the 1921 Graves investigation and witness this day and time. We have made history in identifying the first victim and also giving others the opportunity to memorialize their family members as they see fit, as well, as has been mentioned previously. This work has truly been unprecedented, as is something that had not been done in Tulsa before. So therefore, the hard work that goes into this, is just so very, it's just been so very interesting to me that, we were able to do this work and we're able to carry it on. And with that, I'd like to thank former Mayor G.T. Bynum and our current Mayor, Monroe Nichols, and our entire team for the hard work and perseverance that you have put into this work over all these years to find our history. I mean, who knew that we would come to this point in time where we'd be able to witness this great work? I'm just so very honored. Many of our community members, as I said, and family members left this earth never believing that we'd be doing this great work. So again, I'd like to thank everyone who has had a hand in this work for your perseverance, for any assistance that you have given. I am truly, truly humbled and honored that you have done so and to be a part of this wonderful, wonderful operation. With this said, I'd just like to say that this work has not been done in vain, because it continues our efforts to bring some sense of justice and healing to our communities after so many years. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda, and I'll close this before we take questions. As I started, part of this work is a very technical aspect of what you heard, with words that are even hard for a mayor to pronounce at times. But at the end of the day, this is really about what Brenda just mentioned. This is about bringing closure to families. This is about a community coming together to unite, and in doing so bring closure to this community, about respectively closing one chapter of the story of the Tulsa Race Massacre as we begin to open a new one with the investments that we'll make with the Greenwood Trust, with how we come together to not only remember but to reinvest and to celebrate. And so this is really critically important. It also is a very solemn time. And so I would just encourage folks who, if you want to volunteer, please volunteer. Also, as you were maybe passing by as the work is going on, understand the gravity of what's happening at Oaklawn Cemetery, and make sure we have a level of reverence and respect as folks are doing the hard work that they are doing. I was asked about why we do this at an event not long ago, and I relayed a story from November 4th of 1997. November 4th, 1997 was actually the day of my dad's funeral after he passed away. I was 14 years old. And one of the ways that you're able to square the fact that a parent or a loved one is not going to be there when you graduate high school, or you go to college, or you graduate college, or you have your first kid, or you become mayor, is you get the opportunity to have that closure and know where they are. I can't imagine what it would be like for folks who've not been able to have that. I know it's tough for a community that maybe feels a sense that we haven't gotten there as a community. The work that these individuals are doing, that Brenda's been a great champion for, is the work to bring that level of closure. So whatever we do as a city moving forward, we can do it knowing that everybody has a share in it, but this Graves investigation and the hard work that's being done is critically important. So we must meet it with certainly the courage to seek the truth, but also the compassion, reverence that I believe is deserved by those victims and the wonderful people who are working to make this happen. So with that, if you have any questions, I know the team here is happy to answer them.
So, and don't forget burial 42, because we have 6 very definite gunshot wound victims in our recovery so far. 27 was the first one from 2021. Ooh, time is flying. So he had a cranial gunshot wound. He had evidence of exit wound through his shoulder as well, and I think we recovered an abdominal one from him as well. I spent so much time. Well, at any rate, the one evidence of a bullet through his shoulder was from the defect. It made a very classic exit wound, but we didn't retain the bullet or recover a bullet. So the multiple pattern, same ballistic. Well, the cranial one and the abdominal one were the same relative ballistic class. '27 and 42, yes. Now they will all of the yes, 42 was the individual with a single cranial gunshot wound that was found with an aspect of decomposition. The arrangement of his skeleton demonstrated the bloat phase of decomposition, and so he's still of interest. But anyone we found that even vaguely might, because I say vaguely because we have burial 101 that had particles at one elbow, and I think it was actually the right one, but we didn't find a bullet or any damage, any trauma. And that was before we saw burial 157 with the pewter bullet, because he was a challenge, because we got the bullet from the abdominal area, but he had particles in his cervical area that first told us that something wasn't right with his cause of death. And so 101 could fall into similar class of particles. We don't know, but we can't remove anyone from interest. While there are records of other gunshot wound deaths being buried in Oaklawn, because there are no records for Section 20, any individual we recover, especially males, will be of interest until we get hopefully find their family and then find their story if we can.
I'm just going to follow up just to say, because one of the things that we're looking for from an archaeological perspective, we're looking for patterns in terms of where these people are in relation to one another. Burial 27, 135, 194, 195. 194 and 195 are immediately adjacent to one another. They are all close to one another. Burial 42 is also pretty close, but about a little bit, like 2 rows away from 194 and 195. But they're all in the same general area. The one exception is burial 157 is a bit further to the east compared to these other gunshot victims. They are all in the new Potter's Field and in the same like general like in the relict stream channel that we now know exists that runs along the southern and then also the western side of the cemetery. But along that southern route there where that former channel was, that's where all of these individuals of interest are located in there. Mm-hmm. In terms of area, so each of the excavation blocks that we have executed in the past, we're able to get measurements on that, dimensions on that. And so just in terms of sheer area that we're anticipating covering this round, it's going to be the largest of those excavation blocks. Yep. And I keep forgetting, I'm not doing my repeating of the questions. The timeline, sorry. So our timeline, we are looking at, so this week we're doing the basic site prep and getting things really rolling. And then we're anticipating an additional 3 weeks worth of hand excavations in order to cover what we're anticipating or who we're anticipating seeing within those graves that we expose. So basically the excavation component in total about 4 weeks. And then for any of the individuals that we recover and that we exhume, those will go to Phoebe's on-site laboratory where she and her team will conduct their analyses, and that very often extends beyond the time. It'll be coterminous with our work, but it very likely will extend beyond that and just until it's completed. Thanks. Let me consult the executive summary. No, I think we
She's
actually.
you're welcome.
We didn't put it in there. I don't have that number for you, but if so, Randy asked about the square footage or square meters for that excavation block. I do have that, just not by memory, so I can get that information to you later if you'd like.
Good.
I would say probably one of the main things will be a very detailed analysis from Dr. Douglas Scott of the munitions. So he has, and he actually gives a very detailed description of all of the bullets that he examined. And so that's all in one place within that. He's got a section within the report, and so I think that's definitely going to be of interest. We also have detailed analysis, as I mentioned, of the wood samples from the containers, and that's very informative. I think among those results also what was interesting was that with burial 195, our burn victim, his remains were incomplete in the sense that not all of his remains were present, but he was our heavily burned. When he was recovered from the scene, other things were picked up with him, including a sample of larch wood, which is an architectural type of wood. It's not wood that would have come from the container that he was buried in. So it's an example of a piece of wood that was in amongst his remains, but was not part of the container. So that is another aspect of the results that's within the report for Dr. Haney's section on the paleoethnobotanical analysis. Also of interest with her work was the identification of several caskets that were manufactured from green wood or wood that has not been properly dried, which is considered to be a substandard building material for burial containers. So whether that's just about people not having access to the right kind of wood or some kind of haste in the process of producing the burial containers, that certainly is something that is also of interest. And then there's also detailed artifact analysis as well for both the mortuary artifacts and the non-mortuary artifacts that we've encountered. I'm going to let Phoebe speak to this a little bit more, but
So Randy's asking if the lack of completion for burial 195, if it was due to a collection method such as using a shovel. So burial 195 was missing his hands and feet and most of his cranium, most of his head. And that is not at all atypical for a burn recovery from inside a building, say. If the people doing the recovery are not practiced at recovering burned human remains. Oh, is it Wednesday? Oh, I don't have my phone. Yeah. If I squeeze the phone long enough, there we go.
Well,
Yeah. So hopefully the online viewers will also have, well, if they're internet out of state. Okay. But at any rate, yes, it's not that method. The amount remaining is not at all atypical because for intense burning, burning to where bone starts to char and goes from char to a whitened phase, we call calcine. That level of burning often causes the so I'm trying to be delicate here, but in the same way that okay, now let me not use that. But the muscles contract, and the contraction will expose the ends of the limbs. So the hands will be exposed and the feet will be exposed, the knees and the elbows. So the torso itself may remain, but the top of the head is exposed, just in general. And this is assuming that the body is in a typical posture when the burning starts and when the heat reaches it. And so if you have prolonged burning, if you're trained, you look for the hands, because the hands often are burned into this posture. And if you're in modern age, you'll think, oh, I'll get fingerprints, because you can actually recover the tips of the fingers still present because the hands fell away while the tips still had not burned in this clenched posture. But you have to know to look for them. And so in a setting, early forensic sciences, charred buildings, rapid recovery circumstance, because it's summer, I'm not surprised that we recovered what we did. So the question is, how close are we to determining the exact number of victims? For the race massacre, we're not close. It is difficult to reconstruct this kind of history. We're still considering other sites to examine. Oaklawn, by the community narrative, wasn't the only place to examine for remains. It was just the lowest hanging fruit, so we started there first. But there are more intensive locations like perhaps New Block Park, the Canes area, that not the ballroom, but the land jutting into the Arkansas River. The narrative of recovery when remains were taken to the Rolling Oak Cemetery back when it was Booker T Cemetery. I mean, that's a more difficult, it's private property, so it would be a whole other circumstance to investigate. But those places aren't searched, and it's not unreasonable for us to, I personally, this is just my opinion, not our collective opinion. I suspect another burial location just for the time period between martial law and release of people in large numbers from the concentration camps. So where the dead went in that interval after June 2nd yeah, we can't know. We don't have enough documentation, so all we have is searching. So yeah, we just must keep searching.
So, from a technical perspective, so kind of to Phoebe's point, Oaklawn Cemetery was a bit of the low-hanging fruit, and by that we mean, in terms of gaining access to the property, what it takes to actually be able to work in that location, the fact that it has been a cemetery and served as a cemetery for a very long time, means that, and has not had a lot of intrusive development in that area in the intervening 100+ years now. Those are all things that make it comparatively easier to work in that location, even though it is extremely challenging because we are working in an active cemetery. So it still has its challenges, right? But the other locations are ones that are not, they're more challenging for multiple reasons. The land tenureship situation is different. The extent to which, apart from the Rolling Oak Cemetery, the other locations like New Block Park and so forth, these are locations that have gone through tremendous amounts of land modification in the years since the event, since 1921, all of which obscures the archaeological record and makes it very challenging. So in each of those locations, we can't just simply go and do large block excavation realistically. We really need to have reason to hone the spatial location where we want to deploy those kinds of techniques in order to have a more realistic opportunity to examine and test those locations. So we have preliminary work that needs to be done at those locations, and we have actually begun that process, particularly for the Canes and for some locations within New Block Park. New Block Park is very large, and if you spend any time out there at all while you're doing the work, as we heard, there are many people who will come out and tell you about a different location than where you are that they have heard where there may be mass graves. So all of that just takes some time and effort to actually do some of the preliminary work, like the coring. In some cases, we have also done geophysical survey in those locations. Some of those get better and lesser degrees of results, but so we just do some of these other kinds of preliminary steps to help us better kind of focus on where we think additional work may be warranted.
I'll just say, our position is, you heard kind of about how you think about feasibility and some sort of reasonable ability to actually be able to recover something. We'd act on behalf of what experts are telling us would work. That's the reason why we're back for a 5th time now, and I think that'll be the practice moving forward. These folks are the best in the country at doing what they do, and for us, it's just leading up, following their recommendation on where they believe we could successfully be able to recover folks, and as I said before, provide that level of closure to families and this community.
I'd also just like to say the intentionality of hiding our story and hiding the evidence has been very, very, very evident throughout these processes. We may never know how many people actually died from this atrocity. But as I have shared since the beginning, these efforts in and of themselves speak volumes. And I continue to be so very, very grateful. Thank you.